Welcome to Vulva Stories with Vicky. I'm here today with the wonderful Ashley, who's going to talk to us all about sexuality and relationships and loads more. So, Ashley, firstly, could you please just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you, please?
Oh, yes, I can do that. My name is Ashley. The exciting things about me are I thrive on creativity, on music, and on wellness, and I love to combine those things. Like you, Vicky, I am a survivor of domestic abuse, and I have been working diligently to reclaim everything about my sexual well-being and happiness and health.
Yeah, and actually we connected over our sort of shared stories of domestic abuse, didn't we?
Yes.
Which is obviously a common thing among women, isn't it? It's really sad, but lots of us do connect over such a horrific thing. Let's just jump straight into sex education then. So did you go to school in Canada? Did you grow up in Canada and go to school in Canada?
Yeah, I grew up and went to school in Canada.
Yeah. So
And
how was your sex education over there?
well, I mean, it's been a while, but when I was growing up, I guess that would have been started sex ed in the mid 90s, I guess. I think we were in about the fourth grade, third grade, fourth grade. You started learning about, the basics like puberty and, periods and armpit hair and, the standard things. I remember, yeah, we never had separated classes so that the girls would learn this and the boys would learn this and whatever. It was always just combined. As far as I remember, I don't remember there being anything like separate. And mostly it was just about your bodies for like grade 4 and 5, which would be, what would that be here? So that would be year 5 and 6 here.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So a grade is like one behind what the year is.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so it would have been like year 5 and year 6 that we're talking, but it was grade 4, 5, 6 was when you started. Grade 6, you started talking about sex. Not in detail, but just about like what goes where, and that is sex.
Yes.
End of story.
Yes. Yeah. So was there any awareness or teachings on like self-pleasure and masturbation?
No. No. You don't talk about stuff like that. That's naughty.
Yeah, that's true. So how about things like the LGBT community? Was there anything on that, do you remember?
Maybe a little bit in high school. And in high school you didn't have like sex education, or in health class even, really. There was like one course called CALM, so it's career and life management. So that's where you watched like the childbirth videos and talked about putting on condoms and dildos a little bit. And
really,
but mostly because she kind of like brought one to show you how to put a condom on.
Oh, right.
And
it wasn't a standard thing.
No, and I mean, this teacher was kind of open and out there. She was great. And I mean, she talked about, discharge and all sorts of great things. Anyway, but I think there was a little bit about LGBTQ, but that's, I mean, maybe like mentioned in passing, no discussion. No.
Yeah. So you mentioned then about how open your teacher was, which is really interesting, because I also had sort of I started sex education again in year 5 and 6, which would have been the equivalent to when you did. And through that and then throughout secondary school, I don't actually remember. I remember being shown one video about penetration, and probably one video about periods in secondary school, and that was it. There was nothing on relationships. There was nothing on, you know, the queer community. There was nothing on exploring your sexuality. There was nothing on, you know, self-pleasure and masturbation. So it's interesting then that you also mentioned how open your teacher was, and obviously you got to then see a dildo and had a little conversation about a dildo, which is really cool. So I'm thinking that also it depends who's doing the teaching in these circumstances, because I've spoken to a 25-year-old girl who done her sex education in when did she do it? In 2008. Now, I left school in 2006. So like this, you can imagine how I felt during this conversation. Yeah. She hadn't even started her sex education yet. But it was actually far, far better than what I had experienced. And even then, she, you know, there was no talk of sex toys. There was no talk of exploring your sexuality or self-pleasure. So it's really interesting, I think, to see, you know, the differences there in sex education sort of across the board.
Yeah.
So how do you think then that sexuality contributes to your overall like sense of self?
That's a big question. You know, I think overall it contributes to our overall sense of self. Pardon me. So much more than people like to admit. And, you know, and it's really woven into our everyday life without realizing it. I mean, I think that's one thing that I really think, and it's I don't even know how to describe it, but truly, it's kind of just, it seems to be everywhere. And I think as you get more comfortable with it, then you're like, you allow it to be in other parts of your life, and it just becomes a part of you. And does that make sense? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And what I like to think of is how, you know, sexuality is fluid, and it is just something that is, you know, present and at all times. And I feel like there's such a difference in the generations, you know, how willing someone is to speak about this stuff, and the awareness that has come, you know, in the past few years, you know, with, you know, as I said, I spoke to that 25-year-old and with her sex education and how different that was. And so, I mean, there's great changes coming in sex education, within the sex education and school settings. But also there's far more work that needs to be done with people that actually didn't have that, who are in those, you know, older generations, who perhaps don't accept their sexuality is a part of them and is fluid, and is absolutely okay to accept, you know. So you described your gender as female, but at times you feel you don't really have a gender identity. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. I think now, I mean, I would not identify generally as anything other than a female. Okay, so I should make that clear, I feel. But sometimes I feel like a nothingness, you know. I don't feel that I'm giving feminine energy. I don't feel I'm giving masculine energy. I'm just a body with just existing. Yeah. And for me, that's truly how it feels. I don't feel what I guess what my upbringing would have said is ultra feminine, right? I feel that sometimes, but I don't. And other times I just feel like a vessel of nothingness as far as gender identity goes.
Yeah. But it's not nothingness though, is it? It's like, it's a positive thing, do you think?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it helps me just remain neutral in it, just in different life situations. I think it helps. I think it helps me see things from different perspectives, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it adds just more balance to my life, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And probably contributes to that, you know, concept of sexuality being fluid, because you're just flowing and you're being a human and you're existing and you're just happy being, which I think is really, really important, because I think all too often, going back to, again, to that the generations and the difference in generations, I find that lots of women who are of the previous generation to us, don't ask me what that's called, because I can't. I get confused with all of them. But even, you know, there's a rigidity there. There's no room for movement. There's no room for experiences. And I feel like that holds people back so much. And that was obviously based on their shoulders because of the society that they grew up in. Yeah, so I find that really sad sometimes, especially when you know, especially grandparents. So if I mention my grandparents, just, you know, just not being able to flow, not being able to accept personal growth. I think that's really, really important. And I think that's what was taken away from them, because they were told how to behave. They were told what their role was. They were told what their gender was. And so I think, you know, just being able to flow through that and accept who you are at any given moment is really, really important. So if we talk about your relationship then, because you're in a long distance relationship,
Right.
So how did that come about? I know, you know, if you want to touch upon obviously your experience with domestic abuse, and sort of your journey to meeting this person, and you know, and how it became a long distance relationship.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of funny, and I don't know, my therapist says it's okay, but if I think about it, my first husband was a long distance relationship.
Wow.
My second husband was a long distance relationship.
There's a bit of a theme here.
Yeah, I don't know. And my current boyfriend, long distance. Now, the only difference I see is that we actually spend way more time together than I did with my second husband prior to getting married and things like that. So the husband in question, I'll give the short version of the abuse situation. So I was working in insurance, and he also worked in insurance in the UK, British man, and I just so charming. I fell in love with him 100%, like hopelessly devoted to you kind of deal. And you know, eventually we got married a couple of years after we'd been together, and we moved over here in 2019. And you know, I guess the very short version is things went south very quickly. It was that instant isolation, and you know, it just kind of spiraled down from there. In 2021, I got out with my son, and so my son's from my first marriage, and we escaped, and you know, we were granted indefinite leave to remain as victims of domestic violence, which I do think is important to mention, because I think it does happen a lot for people immigrating, you know, no matter what country you're from, it can happen a lot. And I think it's important to say that if you are experiencing that as an immigrant to any country, there's potentially a way out. So just speak to a lawyer or something like that, you know, find safety, do that, because there could be a way. I didn't know there was a way until I asked one of my immigration lawyers. You know, I just said, like, I don't want to give everything up, but I can't do this. Like, you know, like I don't want to give up my life here, but, you know, we've established ourselves and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, there's a way. I had been taking part in a fitness challenge online, and the first one I took part in was in 2019. I kind of secretly signed up for it, and, you know, and it was great. And I made tons and tons of friends in the fitness challenge, and it kind of kept me afloat through this whole situation here. And I made one friend. I don't know, we seemed to like just be friends right away. And you know what, there's quite a few of us that seem to be friends right away. But yeah, we just connected through this this fitness group, and it's the Nita Strauss Body Shred. She is a guitarist for Alice Cooper, and so she puts this on every now and then, sometimes really close together, sometimes far apart, but whatever. So she's had 6 of these challenges. I've been part of all of them. And yeah, there was just this guy in those challenges, happened to be American. And yeah, no, we were always kind of close, just friends, like really just like, oh, hey, how's it going? When I had things going really wrong at home, sometimes I would just talk with him because he has weird sleeping hours when he's in the States. You know, very normal for him, but for other people it might be weird, but it worked with like our timing. Anyway, so especially after I got out, I was going through a lot of therapy, and, you know, he was always there for me, coming out of these sessions, going into them, making sure that I was okay. And it just, you know, it just gradually grew over time. I told myself I was like, at least 2 years, I'm not going to date, I'm not going to do anything, like, no. And then I fell in love with him. And
does he live in America?
Sorry?
Does he still live in America? Does he live there?
He does.
Oh, so it's that long distance.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so he's actually here right now as we record this. But so we kind of do 2 months and on and 2 months off kind of deal. Obviously, not in the relationship, just being together. So he's, you know, we've been together just over 2 years now. And it's worked really, really well for us because, you know, when I was like saying to my therapist, oh my God, like, am I crazy? I'm like 6 months out of this horrible, horrible situation, but there's something about this guy. I really love him. And she's like, it's okay. And she said, you know, sometimes there's something in the distance that also adds to that safety. And she's like, it's okay. You know, we would talk through it. Okay, we have all the green flags. And it's very important that you look for the green flags, I think. You know, and the first time he came over here was in May 2022. And yeah, I mean, we talk all the time. We talk on the phone and video call and text, like nonstop, basically. And then, and then when he came over that first time on the plane, I just remember him getting off the plane and going, "Oh, you're even more handsome than I expected."
Oh.
And I still feel that all the time. Like we were going out the other day and he was getting ready and I walked in the room and I just went, ooh, ooh. I stood behind him for like, I don't know, like kind of creepy for a few minutes while he's just like getting his stuff together and I'm like, yeah, really dorky, but
I love that.
amazing.
I love that. So you say 2 months on, 2 months off. So is that like do you go to stay with him also?
No, so I mean, trying to figure that out, but
Yeah.
You know, again, my son is in school, and it makes things difficult. And then also getting, I have a few different businesses that I'm just leveling up, and
Yeah.
it kind of needs boots on the ground. So, but hopefully this summer I'll be able to go over, or sometime in the fall or something. We'll see.
Yeah. But I love that. So he wants to stay for a couple of months. So you sort of touched upon this, so I want to sort of dig into this a bit deeper. So we obviously connected over domestic abuse, as we've said. Could you tell us, please, about your journey in exploring sort of intimacy again, so with your new partner, and just how you began to feel safe again? I mean, you said there was all the green flags, and obviously you found him wildly attractive.
Yeah.
How has that journey gone? Do you feel like I don't know, do you feel like those 2 months are enough? Do you think it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? But yeah, tell us a bit about exploring that intimacy again.
Right. So sorry about that. Exploring the intimacy. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I can say is that he has always checked on me, that I'm not hurting, that I'm not tired, that I'm still happy in the situation, that I haven't decided, he'll check. If you've had enough, that's fine. It's done. There's never any, and I've definitely said sometimes, yeah, I've had enough. And he's like, that's okay. That's great. Like, still loved every moment. Great. It's, and I think that's one thing. It's, the checking in. There was something else I was just thinking about and all of that. That's one thing. When we were talking on my own podcast, I mentioned about pajamas. And so I was not allowed to wear pajamas in my previous marriage, and it's one big thing for me, that taking my pajamas back was huge. And so now that safety too, even in, of course you can wear your pajamas, he'll bring me pajamas, and there's nothing. I put my jammies on, and that's like my safety and my comfort, and it's completely respected, and that's just that. It's not like my husband would kind of be like, make you feel guilty, whatever. You're putting a wedge between us. Why are you wearing that? If you're gonna lay with me, well, then you should just be with me, blah blah blah, that kind of deal. And but I mean, it's nothing about that. It was just, I'm just more comfortable sleeping in pajamas. It's not a big thing. So there's that respect in that.
Do you still find that sort of like when that happens, like when you're sort of you're being intimate with each other, and he says, like, are you still happy? Or you're like, what, I'm done now, I'd like to just put my pajamas on. Do you still find that you're like, wow, I can actually leave this situation and put my pajamas on when I want to?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot, and just, and I think I have been thinking about it a lot, and I think that's been kind of a theme for me, is shame and guilt, and it's so being able to let go of all of that stuff is it's incredible. And I mean, the guilt, especially, like, if you whether you do want to have sex or you don't want to have sex, you get the guilt one way or another, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So being able to let go of that, it's huge. And I think it does, again, it goes back to taking control back of your body and of your sexuality and everything else. You're not, you're another being, a whole being in this thing. It's not, you're not a toy or a plaything or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important to highlight, I think, actually, and especially here, and for anyone who's listening that has experienced domestic abuse, and or is experiencing domestic abuse, or is sort of a few years down the line and still trying to find themselves, still trying to explore who they are, and get back into their sense of self. It's important for them to hear, what happens during intimate moments. When, even if we put abuse aside, domestic abuse aside, sort of our generation wasn't really given that space to or access to information on self-pleasure and masturbation. And if we think about self-pleasure and even just being naked in a room by yourself, there's a vulnerability there, a massive vulnerability.
Huge.
Even sex education didn't allow us to come to terms with this vulnerability and to feel safe with our own bodies anyway. And then when we introduce that abuse into the mix, the consequences of that in later relationships and how sort of that appears, and how you go from having that vulnerability compromised and taken advantage of, and then how you begin this journey and go on to actually feeling safe again in that vulnerability, and then allowing someone else to come in and take care of you in that vulnerability is huge. It's massive. And for other women listening, you shared about your pajamas and just having that space. For me, it was I wasn't allowed to sleep, so I didn't, I had my sleep controlled. So now, if we're talking strictly in sort of like in sex, when my husband is wonderful, and when I say, I'm done, I mean, I've got OCD. So when we are in intimate moments, there have been many times where I've sort of gone, oh, and he's like, you're feeling funny, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. So he just holds me, and he'll just hold me. It's completely okay for him to hold me and for me to be vulnerable in that moment. And then, like you said, you'll go and put your pajamas on. But if I want to go to sleep, I can go to sleep whenever I want. And it's just like, it seems so simple, but actually for, women, like what are we telling them right now? We're telling them that it's those little things that are going to be massive in the future. Would you agree?
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree with that. It is taking control back over your body. And I think too, you'll be shocked to find how many little things just keep popping up over the years. You're, oh, I didn't think about that one before. And then new things seem to come up often. But you know what? I take them as blessings, and I say, okay, well, have another moment, but okay, this is part of my healing process, so it's okay that they're coming up now. It just means it's another step in getting better again.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to sort of a woman who has experienced domestic abuse, and is sort of going on this journey of exploring sexuality again? Is there like any specific advice, sort of around self-pleasure, or being vulnerable again?
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, with a partner, for sure, I would say the biggest thing is if you're with a new partner, communicate, and it sounds so simple, but it's not. And voicing some of these fears and concerns that you have, it can be so difficult, but it needs to happen so that you can put yourself in a situation that you will feel safe, right? You know, and to be fair, I can't remember everything that I had said now, but you know, there were things I mentioned before, like, this is a no-go, that's a no-go, if, you know, whatever the case may be, right? And it could have even just been like, don't, you know, don't say this, because that was like repeated or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
things.
just your healthy boundaries and what is
Yeah.
acceptable to you and what your limits are. Yeah, definitely.
And so I think if you establish that going in, you set yourself up for a better experience. And just, again, yeah, a lot of it does come back just to feeling safe in that moment.
Yeah.
I think as far as self-pleasure, I think the thing is, my thought would just be, don't be afraid to spend that time with yourself, right? And whether it's, you know, totally sexual, or if it's just spending time, you know, in your body and reflecting on how you feel overall. I think that part's really important, and it helps you uh, just on that path of rediscovering yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think also even sort of in one of my sessions that I've done, just being in that vulnerability, so just taking your clothes off, just in a safe, private space, and just being sort of in that vulnerability and understanding that it's okay to be safe in that, and that we don't have to be ashamed of that. And I think that goes a long way when it comes to moving on into relationships. Just like you said, knowing your boundaries and communicating those boundaries, and then you've sort of got like a baseline to go on, haven't you? Because then if your boundaries are compromised, or if there's a pattern of compromising those boundaries, then you know that there's something not quite right in the relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. So I'm jumping straight into the porn question now. But before I do so, I would like to mention that, because I'm often thinking, you know, I speak about domestic abuse all the time. It's something I'm very passionate about, you know, raising awareness and helping women and stuff like that. But I also speak about, you know, sex and pleasure and, you know, all the good stuff about being intimate with another person. And you know, sometimes it can seem such like a stark contrast, but it's so, sex and relationships is so intertwined, isn't it? And so I think it's very important that it goes sort of hand in hand with all that education, and that we make it very, you know, there is lots of good stuff too, like all this pleasure that can be had and found. So yeah, what is your opinion on porn, and how, if it has ever, how is it presented sort of in your relationships or in your world?
Okay. My overall opinion is, generally, what you see, it can be so aggressive and like kind of just like gives you the heebie-jeebies to watch it. You're just kind of like, you get the ick.
Mm-hmm.
And just truly, because, like, I mean, why are they so angry? I just don't get it. Like, I don't know. And to me, I don't think I would want to watch angry angry sex.
No. So have you not ever watched porn before?
No, I have, but you know, I'll be honest. If I would prefer to go for lesbian porn,
Okay. Yeah.
because it's not so angry. At least they seem to like each other.
No, I absolutely get that, you know, because actually there was a study by Pornhub when they released their they do like a yearly sort of overall statistical report, and 2023, I recently read this, women preferred lesbian porn. That was the top searched for from women, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because all of, you know, this stigma that surrounds porn comes from a very real place of aggression, like you said. Like porn, when it first come about, when film first developed, it was disgusting, it was awful, and it involved, you know, objectifying women, and just focused on male pleasure, and women were basically just objects to be used for that. Absolutely true. So it makes sense that a lot of women prefer lesbian porn. And now, the more and more I speak to women, you know, in my work, and people who contact me, and, you know, in her intimacy, that more and more women are experiencing and exploring with being with other women now. And I know that sounds silly to say, because obviously lots of women are gay and have always been, even if they are from a generation where they felt shame about that. But the more and more I speak to women, and these are women, you know, from that generation who have identified as straight throughout their lives, are now exploring their sexuality, just exploring with being with women. So it's really interesting that you've said that, because it is, you know, a thing. It seems more natural. Obviously, I'm a champion for Erica Lust, who produces, you know, ethically produced porn, and, you know, her whole thing is women's pleasure. And obviously there are men, and, you know, everyone is represented, and it feels so fluid and so natural. And I think that's what's really important there to point out, that for, you know, those women, especially in the generation previous to us, that it's okay for them to sort of explore their pleasure in that way. But yeah, so if it's taking it back to the porn conversation, yes, I completely get that. Is it something that you've had a conversation with your partner about at all?
No, I mean, I don't. No, I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, we talk about it, but we don't. We haven't watched any together. Nothing like that. No, I mean, it's never really played a role in any of my relationships, except coming home and, you know, finding a special moment, which is, I mean, is fine too. But yeah, but, you know, that's all.
Yeah. I wonder, what is your sort of communication like with your boyfriend? If it is, I know you're speaking all the time. Do you sort of speak about, like, exploring fantasies and desires?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, we definitely talk about fantasies, desires, this and that. But definitely, yeah, we haven't watched any porn together.
I wonder, has he ever said his opinion on porn?
No, not really. No, because it just doesn't really come up, you know. No. I'm gonna have to find out now.
And let us know. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I think, especially, you know, if we're speaking to women who have experienced domestic abuse, I think that's obviously very apparent between us, and the things that we talk about. So is there anything you'd like to speak about a bit more or add in that sense?
You know, one thing that I've been thinking about, kind of just as we've been talking a little bit, is, you know, going back to the guilt and the shame. But in some ways, I feel like from my childhood growing up that and I'm wondering if this also relates, Jesus, like a therapy session. Okay. So I wonder if it relates a little bit to my feeling of just existing at times, not being female, whatever. But, you know, sometimes I felt it was not okay to be a woman growing up.
Right.
And I think, you know, because I know I'd pick out cute clothes like a low cut shirt, little mini skirts, cool stuff, you know, in my teens, as you do. But I do remember being, you know, told, oh, you know, that's too sexy, that's too whatever, you shouldn't be wearing that. And I think parts of me still carries that through today. But I think it is really probably tied into you know, all these themes of abuse and things like that have come through. What my advice would be is, whether it's stuff that you have carried from when you were a kid or it's things that you picked up in this bad situation, just let it go without any judgment. You know, if something feels right for you, do it. Just try it. You know, as long as you're in a safe environment, you're not harming yourself or other people, just do it. That's the secret. Do it. Go for it. Because you'll feel more sad if you didn't. And it's, again, it's part of taking back your power.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's great advice. I'm quickly going to chuck another question in here because of what you mentioned about sort of dressing and how you dressed when you was a teenager, how that made you feel when people told you that that was wrong. I've never really explored this subject, but I suppose it'd be a really fascinating subject, and I suppose it is sort of spoken about quite a lot now, and it is about what women wear, isn't it? So you mentioned that you were sort of made to feel bad. I was also made to feel bad if I had a low cut top on or a short skirt or, you know, any of those things. How do you feel about that now?
I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I love mini dresses. They're so cute. But sometimes I still panic about wearing them. Like, oh, you know, what will people think? Am I, you know, am I just looking for attention? I'm just like, no, they're super cute. You know, silly things like sometimes I can't remember where it came from exactly, but, you know, exposed shoulders. I'll have a moment about that. Like, it's too much. You can see my shoulders. Like, what is this, Victorian times? No. Like, what is going on? You know, it's stuff that I still struggle with, but I have been trying to push my boundaries. Like, you know, if you like this stuff, just wear it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not that hard, but it is that hard. And so,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, I still struggle with it, but I'm actively working on it.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And I think I also do too. And I think that's probably, again, a generation thing. Because I'm sure like you said, every time I get dressed, when I'm thinking about what I'm wearing, I have those moments where I think, oh, like someone's gonna think I'm a slut, or someone's gonna call me a slag, or this is gonna happen, or that's gonna happen. Because that's, you know,
It's just so ingrained in us. And the funny thing is, it doesn't happen. And if it
no,
does, it's just like some guy you told to fuck off because
yes,
you wouldn't accept a drink from him or something. Do you know what I mean?
exactly that. Yeah.
Like,
So, bottom line, wear what the fuck you want to wear. If it's cute, go for it.
exactly. And if you're happy in it, just do with
just
it.
be happy and flow.
Flow. Yeah.
Ashley, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you for coming to Vulva Stories with Vicky.
Thank you for having me.